What's up everybody, it's me Murdock, and today I'm here to talk to you about the latest Spider-Man movie set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Spider-Man No Way Home. Just as a warning, the first chunk of this video is gonna be spoiler free, and at a very specific moment, I'm gonna get into spoilers. But don't worry, I will give you a very clear warning when that's about to happen to give you enough time to click away. And I encourage you not to watch the second half of this video if you haven't seen the movie yet. Close the video when I get to the spoilers, go watch the movie, and then come back and finish it. Don't let me be the one to spoil it for you. So with that being said, let's get into this. This film takes place directly after the events of Spider-Man Far From Home, in which Mysterio has revealed to the world that Spider-Man's secret identity is Peter Parker. Peter seeks help from Dr. Strange to perform a spell to make everyone forget who Spider-Man secretly is, but when the spell goes wrong, visitors from other universes begin to appear. I honestly think that this is easily the best of the three Spider-Man MCU films. I enjoyed the previous two, but I didn't love them. I think the villains were good, and I liked Tom Holland as Peter, but they were just so intertwined with the MCU and Iron Man, and they just didn't give me that traditional Spider-Man feeling that I wanted. However, with this movie, even though there is so much going on, the heart and the tone of it is very Spider-Man-y, and that was both impressive and relieving for me. I don't think this is a perfect movie though, and it does have some flaws. So I do want to get into the few negatives that I have with the film before I just start gushing about all the things that I loved. The big thing for me that I wasn't crazy about was the setup to the plot itself. Like I said, it revolves around Peter going to Dr. Strange and asking him to perform a spell to make everyone forget who he secretly is. Peter won't stop talking during the spell, which is a very Peter thing to do, and then the spell goes wrong and the whole multiverse breaks open. While there's parts of this setup that I like, I just don't think that overall it was a strong enough reason to justify having all of these different villains from the previous movies come together. They give some further explanation to why this is all happening, and at first I was like, okay, that's pretty interesting. But then the more that I thought about it, the more that I just started having questions pop into my head like, okay, but then why is this person here? And just stuff like that. I just don't think that the setup was as tight as I would have liked for a film that does so much cool stuff and brings all of these different universes together. I have similar thoughts to this as I did with Endgame, where I had a blast watching the movie. But some of the time travel stuff that they set up just doesn't make much sense the more that you think about it. But in the same vein, the finale, the action sequences, and the character moments are just so good that you can overlook a lot of it. But it's still there. There's also a lot of lazy or just non-explanations for some things. This includes the reasoning behind Electro's new look and Spidey's new black and gold suit. Stuff that I think look cool, but I feel like the writers were just like, wait, why does it look like this? I don't know, because it looks dope, just make some shit up. Also, I'm still not a huge fan of Jon Watts, the director of this film and the previous two. I think he's good, but lacks his own individual style that someone like Sam Raimi or more seasoned directors have. Like, he's giving me all the things that I want to see, and I'm enjoying it, but visually or editing-wise, there's not much spice or flavor to it. So that's pretty much all the negatives that I have with this film, and I've gotta say, once the spell stuff happens and all of the other villains start appearing, this movie really starts to find its footing. Everything just really clicks into place, and it just remains entertaining and fun all the way up to the very end. This movie has a lot of returning faces with 5 different villains, and it immediately gave me anxiety and flashbacks from Spider-Man 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, just thinking to myself, oh god, Sony still didn't learn their lesson, did they? And while it is crowded, it actually works this time around because we have background on each individual villain from their respective movies. So will this movie work better if you've seen all the previous Spider-Man films? To me, yeah, absolutely. And a lot of these characters already actually had near perfect arcs in their own movies, so this actually had me a little bit worried for where this film would take them. I was scared that they might ruin the original endings that Doc Ock and Green Goblin had in Spider-Man 1 and 2, but thankfully they don't. They get new alternate journeys, as if the endings for those films didn't happen and if they were snatched out of their own respective timelines right before the ending would have taken place. Alfred Molina was fantastic, as always. He's a tremendous actor and does a great job as Otto Octavius once again and stays true to his character's original story. Willem Dafoe, however, is the scene stealer in this movie and is just flat out amazing as Norman Osborn, aka the Green Goblin. He loses his mask at a certain point and you just get straight up glorious Willem Dafoe face making the craziest and wildest expressions. He is insane in this movie and straight up wreaking havoc throughout the film. He proves once again in this film why the Green Goblin is the ultimate Spider-Man villain. Also, I thought that all of the action scenes that took place were pretty great. Specifically, the Spidey versus Goblin fights were really good. They were heavy, brutal, and had so much weight behind them, physically and emotionally, that you were really invested in them. There's also an action sequence that involves Doctor Strange that you probably saw in the trailers. The context of it in the film was a nice surprise, and it was really cool visually speaking, and I love the way that they wrapped it up. Now, Tom Holland, I thought, was really good in this film and gave his best performance as Peter Parker yet, and finally came into his own with the character. This movie completes his arc in a way for me that was really satisfying. Like I said before, I have my problems with the MCU Peter, but this movie moved him away from those and into a new and exciting direction. And that's why this movie really feels like a Spider-Man one. Peter's way of going about things with the villains and his problem solving and his heart and his emotions are all really true to the character. And it all leads to a very satisfying finale and a really, really good ending in my opinion. I'm honestly more excited for where the franchise will go now than I ever have been before. So yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this movie and I will be watching it again. Multiple times. It's not perfect, like I said, mainly just the starting plot and catalyst event for it all I thought was a little weak. Just like the more I think about it, the more holes and questions start to arise. I just wish that chunk of the film was as strong as the rest of it was. But once it kicks into gear after the spell happens and the villains start arriving, it becomes very fun and very epic. Is it the best Spider-Man film ever? I don't think so. Like, as a whole and having a contained story, I think that some of the others have done it better. Is it the most entertaining though? Maybe, yeah, probably. I had a blast watching this thing. I will say this movie is pure fan service and I embrace that, I can't lie. This was 100% Kevin Feige just spoon feeding me everything that I wanted and I ate that shit up. But it didn't feel undeserved. It contributed to the story and to the character arcs, which is what really impressed me. If you're a Spidey fan, then you have to watch this movie. And if you're just a superhero fan in general, then I think you should see it too. Like I said, this is easily my favorite of the 3 MCU Spider-Man films, and even though there's a lot going on, it is very much still a Spider-Man story at its core, and it's very true to the character. So with that being said, let's get into some spoilers. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You've been warned. So yeah, basically all the leaks were true. The pictures, the cameos, the rumors, mostly everything. So even though it might have ruined some of the surprises for me, it didn't stop me from feeling any less excited when they happened. First off, we got a cameo from my boy, Matt Murdock. If you couldn't tell from my name, Murdock, I'm clearly a big Daredevil fan. And there's not much to say here about it. It was great. Peter needed a lawyer, Matt Murdock is a lawyer, boom, magic, we got it. Short, sweet, and we finally get to see Charlie Cox in the MCU again. I am a happy fan. And now, for the big ones, we all knew it was happening, but it was still extremely satisfying to finally see Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield back in their roles as Spider-Man. And let me say, Andrew Garfield's performance in this movie was fantastic. He made me second guess my opinions on the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Maybe those movies as a whole weren't great, but Andrew Garfield is a good actor and he's a good Peter too. This was just confirmation that it wasn't his fault, it was the studio's. He was so good, so funny, so charismatic, and he just really gave it his all in this performance. It was nice to see him come back and nail it. Tobey Maguire was a lot more low-key, but it worked because he gave off this older, wiser Spider-Man that had more of a mentor feel. And of course, the Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi films basically defined my childhood, so yeah, I was geeking out when he came back on screen and we got to see the iconic web suit. It was everything I wanted. But when Tobey Maguire needed to be funny, he was. The whole bit where he was just like, the Avengers? That's great. What is that? Had me cracking up, and I swear I think about it almost every day since I've seen the film. But I gotta say, the surprising part of it all was just the chemistry that all 3 Peters had together was off the charts. Seeing them do science together and compare villain stories together and just get to know each other was everything I wanted it to be, and I swear I could have just watched a whole movie of just that. And that was the nice thing, it wasn't just small cameos. They both got a nice chunk of screen time to really breathe and let you know who they are. We got some nice closure to the character with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man saving MJ when she was falling, and I swear, as soon as I saw that in the trailer, I knew that was gonna happen, but it was still really satisfying and really emotional to see. And we got to at least hear Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker say that he worked things out with MJ, and it it made me really happy. It was just all stuff that I couldn't believe that I was seeing on screen, and it was just really emotional and just made me really happy to watch. And on top of that all, we finally get to see Tom Holland's Peter Parker become Spider-Man for real. I loved this ending. Somehow they made One More Day work in a really good way on screen, which is a sentence I never thought I'd be saying out loud. Seeing him become a street level hero and losing all of his Avengers and Iron Man tech and connections, and just seeing him sew his own suit at the end was what I wanted this entire time. The new suit is phenomenal, by the way. It looks like it was lifted straight out of the comics or the animated TV show, and I can't wait to see a high quality image of it. But yeah, Tom Holland's Peter has finally experienced loss and consequences by losing Aunt May and having his identity hurt those closest to him. And he now knows that with great power comes great responsibility, and it was just so good. Even though the ending was very sad with him losing MJ and Ned from having their memories wiped with the spell going through, that decision that he makes to leave them out of his life and let them go to college and be safe, it was a very Peter Parker Spider-Man decision. And like I mentioned before, the fact that Peter wanted to save and cure all of these villains instead of letting most of them go back to their timelines and die, that was just a really good way of going about this problem. I just thought it was gonna be very basic, like all the villains are here and Peter's gonna fight them for some reason, but I'm glad that it wasn't. There was an actual motive that Peter had to try and fix this problem that he created, and it was just very true to his character. So basically all of this movie's character work really impressed me and I thought was really well done. And it got me extremely excited for the new status quo. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the movie, and I want to hear yours, so let me know in the comments, what did you think of Spider-Man No Way Home? Did you think it was the best Spider-Man movie ever, or were you disappointed from the high expectations that you had with the film? Let me know, I'll reply, and we'll have a discussion. Also, while you're down there, if you could do me a huge favor and like this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, it would help me out so much with getting my videos out to a bigger audience. Once again, thank you so much for watching. My name is Murdock, and I'll catch you next time.